Joining us right now, Susan Ferrechio, of course, of the Washington Examiner, and a frequent guest host here on Mornings on the Mall. So good to have you, Susan Ferrechio. Good morning to you. You staying warm?
Good morning, you guys. Yes, so far, Doug's out walking the dog.
People who don't know, that's Doug McKelway is out walking the dog.
Yes, Mr. Ferrechio, I like to refer to him as. Susan, we saw the Senate get into session yesterday talking about extending unemployment benefits. They had to delay their vote, which is a bit of a surprise. Was that because Harry Reid did not have the votes he thought he had for the test vote that was scheduled?
Well, actually, no. It's a little more convoluted than that. It's all very political. See, if in fact there weren't enough votes to move ahead on the unemployment insurance benefits, then the Democrats could say, look, these Republicans are blocking this important benefit for people who are out of work. It's a great political talking point. But they can't really make the point fairly if they held a vote yesterday. Because of the weather, various lawmakers were delayed. I know Senator Lindsey Graham, for instance, had an emergency landing with his plane in South Carolina. There were others who couldn't make it in on time. That would have really kind of muddled the argument that Harry Reid could make. So Republicans actually accused him of scheduling this sort of gotcha vote because there weren't even enough people there to make up the full 100 senators who normally vote on things. So Reid capitulated and said, okay, we'll have the vote today at 10:30. That way it can be, all is fair. It gave plenty of time for people to come in. We can really assess whether there is enough Republican support because don't forget, Democrats don't control fully 60 votes that would be needed to move forward on this. They need Republicans. And right now, we're just not sure if Republicans are there. We know Dean Heller of Nevada, where the employment rate is 9%, is a co-sponsor of this 3-month extension. But other moderates so far are saying no, basically.
Wow.
Corker of Tennessee, Mark Kirk of Illinois, people are saying, look, we're willing to go forward with the unemployment benefits, but we have to find a way to pay for them. It's $6.4 billion over 10 years. It's a lot of money, and this has been 5 years going on federal unemployment benefit extension. So let's find a way to pay for this because that will shore up the economy in a way that will create more jobs.
So your sense of it is that if they can find a way to pay for it, take the money from someplace else legitimately, that Republicans might go along with an extension of unemployment benefits, but otherwise no.
Yes, I feel fairly certain. For instance, even if they could round up a few votes, say Susan Collins of Maine, where the unemployment rate they've been struggling for years, and she tends to vote occasionally on things like this. Even if they could round up enough votes, you have to deal with the House. Now, John Boehner said, I'll do this, but only if we can talk about ways to pay for it. So it's really not going anywhere until they get these so-called pay-fors, and they don't have them yet.
Meanwhile, Susan Ferrechio, the president today is going to do one of those events at the White House. He's going to be, in the background is going to be a bunch of unemployed people, and he's, of course, going to be pulling at the heartstrings and saying these people have been out of work and the Republicans want them to starve in the streets. Is anyone on the Republican side, especially in the House there, raising the point that these people are out of work 5 years into this president's tenure? Maybe we should start fixing the problems as to why they can't find work, and maybe it's the president's fault.
Yes, they are making the case. It does tend to get drowned out by the drama, and well, I shouldn't even use the word drama, but just the pain and the image of people who need to have benefits to just pay their rent and buy groceries. So,
right. They don't care whose fault it is. They need to survive. I get it.
The Democrats would say it's the more noble argument, right? That and Republicans would agree. They get out and say, look, this is something that we really need to address. We understand that people are suffering and that we need to come up with a way to provide these benefits. But the argument that Republicans have been making during debate on the House floor yesterday and in various press conferences and Sunday talk shows is that one of the reasons why people aren't finding work is that the economy has been weakened by our $17 trillion debt. And that's one thing we have to try to put to rest here. And one way to do that is to pay for things as we go and not keep adding.
What a concept.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I want to ask you, though, what always happens, Congress goes away for the holidays, and they get back in touch with the voters. They get back in touch with their constituents. If you're a senator, you've been traveling the state during the holidays. If you're a member of Congress, you've been traveling your district. And they've been, I would imagine, getting an earful about Obamacare. As they come back, do you sense that there's going to be more Democrats feeling great nervousness about Obamacare and whether or not it's something that they can run on in the coming election?
Yes, and I think you'll see, for instance, this week the House will take up a couple measures that address issues concerning the health care law. One of them, the Exchange Information Disclosure Act, which would compel the administration to provide more frequent and detailed information about exactly who is signed up for this. Because, we've been getting kind of vague info from the Obama administration. And the second piece of legislation, I think, which is even more interesting, that would require the Department of Health and Human Services to let people know within 2 days if there's been a security breach that's endangered someone's personal data.
Wow.
I think in terms of what you were asking, Brian, is that you'll see more Democrats voting for things like this because they are hearing from constituents and they feel like they need to go on the record as showing that they want to do something to address the problems of the health care law. That's enabling them to look more viable once we get into the election season, which will start any time now. And I think in the Senate, I think you're going to hear a clamoring from some Senate Democrats for some kind of legislation for Harry Reid to take up, which is one of the reasons why you saw the president add some new staff members whose sole purpose is really to kind of quell the sort of Democratic rebellion over the health care law in Congress. So absolutely, I think has been an effect with people going home and talking to constituents and coming back to Congress more worried than ever about their own reelection prospects.
Susan Ferrechio, you had a big cover story on the Washington Examiner yesterday about Eric Cantor and his designs on the Speaker's gavel, basically saying he's got the votes and he's ready to go if John Boehner steps down. Little unseemly to have this conversation, isn't it? I mean, is there reason to believe John Boehner is ready to step down? And why is Eric Cantor and his supporters floating this balloon 1 year out?
Well, it was our idea to address it, and he actually told us he really didn't want to, focus on whether or not he would be Speaker, that his job right now is just to be Majority Leader. But the writing, I think, is on the wall, and that Boehner's days are numbered, just because he may not want to be there much after the next session at most. That's the sense, is that his time is limited. So you automatically start thinking, well, who's next in line here? And the person that everyone presumes will be able to easily succeed him is Eric Cantor. There just isn't anyone else who has the kind of widespread support that he has right now.
Will the group of conservatives known as the Tea Party caucus, the rabble-rousers, will they accept an Eric Cantor, or will they put up a stink?
Not all of them, and that's where it gets interesting. There are a lot of people who are on the Tea Party right who think that he doesn't fully represent the Conservative Party, and they want to put forward their own candidate. However, that stuff will be fought over in conference, and I think by the time there's a speaker on the floor for the full House vote on the opening day of the new session, whether it be next session or the session following, that they'll have an agreement, because they know if they don't all fully agree, that can be a real problem when you're voting for Speaker.
All right, Susan Ferrechio, well, that will certainly be the background, in the background all year long as things make their way through the House and moving toward the 2014 midterm. Susan Ferrechio, Washington Examiner, great to have you.